So this week's parasha, Tetze, means when you go, contains more applications of the commandments than any of the others. And they give us a clear example on how to apply them in relationship to our neighbor, as well as to the rest of creation, the animals, the earth, and even plants. Unlike Western mentality, in which the so-called law of love must rule over society, the Torah places justice and merit first, teaching us standards of behavior in a variety of situations. For example, when we're called to go to war, it tells us that we must not forget or give sinat chinam, which means free hate, a clean slate. Rather, it warns us that we must remember what Amalek did to us. Notice that the Torah does not teach us to hate others, nor to continually live in the past. Rather, it tells us to revive the past, to relive it in order to prevent events from happening again. Looking at each of the commandments in this portion, as I step back from afar, like Rabbi used to speak, as you step back when you see a mosaic. Mauricio said he could see the picture described by Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Now the portion from Devarim 21:10 to 22:12 teaches us about the regulations related to property, caring for animals and family. Then from chapter 22:13 to 24:5, it gives us civil and criminal laws in areas such as sexual behavior, how to deal with family, interaction with non-Israelites, about vows, divorce, and loan. From chapters 24:10 to 25:16, we learn about commercial law, loans, fair wages, just measures and weights, as well as labor protection. The portion ends with remembering human rights and justice among the nations. We were told to remember when Amalek attacked and murdered the old, the weak, and the sick when Israel was leaving Egypt. That's why, seeing that the Eternal has declared what is good, the prophet Micah refers to the practical commandments taught in the Torah that we find in this portion. Now, there are different levels of understanding the commandments, which are all good. But our challenge is to grow, to go from reading them, to understanding them, to believing them, and finally to trust that they are the best for us, despite the fact that at some point, fulfilling a commandment may go against our very nature. And finally, to internalize them in such a way that we live them, that is, that we obey without cognitively thinking that we are forcing ourselves to comply with these laws, but that we subconsciously live the Torah. For example, this is Mauricio speaking. If a person threatens me, the Torah tells me, first, offer him peace. We read that in Deuteronomy 20:10. My first reaction may be to defend myself or attack, but the Torah tells me, offer him peace. What's the purpose of that? Internalizing this knowledge in such a way that no matter from whom the attack comes, I will first offer peace, even if it causes me fear, anger, aggression. When we manage to control our impulses, we contribute to fulfilling what is described in Micah 4:3. Nation will not take up sword against nation, and never again will they train for war. Amen. Why? Because one of the goals of the Torah is to promote living in peace. This portion also gives us wisdom. Tetze, when you go, we can understand it to mean when whatever situation arises, you will behave in such a way. When the Eternal told us that we must be light, it implies that our actions are worth 1,000 words, and that our behavior defines who we are. We are a separate nation, a holy nation. I'd like to focus on the fact that the Torah restricts the situations that we should remember or not. Today, many atrocities are being repeated from one generation to another due to the irresponsibility of forgetting. Or there are nations that are polarized because they cannot forget their past. If we look at the situation in Afghanistan, for example, how is it possible that the Taliban can return after 20 years to rule over that country, after all the evil they have inflicted upon the world? This is a clear example of how forgetting does not come from the Torah. We also see other nations, such as India, divided into various groups. They cannot advance as a country due to the rivalries that arise from not accepting their differences and not reconciling the lawsuits generated ages ago. The Tanakh, which is an acrostic for Torah, Nevi'im, prophets, Ketuvim, writings, the Tanakh invites us to remember, first, the Exodus from Egypt. In Shemot 13:33, in Deuteronomy 5:15 and 24:18 to 22, don't worry, I'll send you all these verses. We remember that God's desire is for man to live in total freedom. And we have the responsibility to fight, to retain our freedom. In the same way, we cannot enslave other human beings. The Torah bids us to live with justice. Second, the manna in Exodus 16, we remember the miracles that the Eternal manifested in the desert and his care to provide sustenance for us daily. These are important things to remember. Third, we remember the Shabbat in Exodus 20, verse 8. We must remember that we are taking time to consecrate this special day to the Eternal so that we can reconnect with him. Remember, God gives us life. Life equals time. Therefore, God gives us time for ourselves. And in gratitude, we must return time for him. Fourth, we remember what Amalek did to us. We remember the actions provoked by free hate, sinat chinam. According to tradition, by not remembering, we lost the temple. Fifth, we remember the revelation at Sinai. To recall the divine origin of the Torah is not simply any reading or any entertainment book. It's the key to understanding how to live a full life in this world. Sixth, we remember the testing in the wilderness. In this passage, we remember the consequences of idolatry, how it produces death, division, and the breakdown in our relationship with the Borei Olam. Seventh, we are to remember Yerushalayim in context of Psalm 137:5. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, which according to our sages was written by Jeremiah, inviting us to remember our origins. We can't know where we are going until we know where we come from. And also to remember our dwelling place, and the dwelling place where the Eternal chose to manifest himself in order to revive our closeness, our relationship with the divine presence, no matter how far away we feel from it, physically or spiritually, no matter what situation we're in. Eighth, Micah 6:5 reminds us of the actions of Balak and Balaam. Let us remember that no matter what evil is spoken against us, Israel will enjoy divine protection, and that any evil or curse desired against us can become a blessing. Let us remember the false prophets, or those who speak or spoke what the Eternal has not commanded them to utter. There are many false prophets today, and we need to be careful. Ninth, the action of Miriam, Moses' sister, in Deuteronomy 24:9. Remember the consequences of Lashon Hara, gossip, the evil tongue. Whoever we are, whether we're you or me, a prophet, leader, people of influence in society, the consequences are the same no matter who. And 10th, to remember that God is the source of our strength and our wealth, from Deuteronomy 8:18. We must remember that He owns everything, so that we live with humility, recognizing that whatever we received, it's from the blessing of His hand. And finally, let us remember that God is God. Isaiah 46:9 says, "Remember the former things of old, that I am God, there is none else. I am God, and there is none like me, and that He is good." Psalm 103, 1-2, 17-18, 42, 4-11. He is good. To remember is to relive a situation as if we were in that place and in that time. It's not our imagination. It's not about ruminating over any situation from our past. It brings benefit to the plasticity of our brain and our concentration. What things do you remember today? Are you ruminating on your good or your bad past experiences that do not allow you to grow or develop? Or are you remembering the words of the Eternal? Shabbat Shalom.